guys, welcome back to the Green Tea Podcast. So, today's episode is all about Pisces season, the fish, the water signs, right? All right, so Emma, take us straight into the episode. What is the theme of Pisces all about?
Okay, so Pisces season runs this year from February 18th until March 20th. Pisces is a mutable water sign, so it is all about moving with the literal flow of life and water, emotions, all these things. Um, it is a sign that's deeply compassionate, deeply empathetic. It is sensitive to the oneness that we all share as humans, but some of the shadows that it might experience are things like avoidance or escapism. This could also be like addiction or substance use or things that enable us to get into an altered state of mind, wherein we no longer have to deal with like the harshness of reality as it is. Um, so yeah, I mean that's kind of like the general gist of it. Like I said, they're very empathetic and compassionate, which is used to their advantage. They're known to be very divine healers, very artistic and imaginative people. They do very well when it comes to, I don't want to say living life like in a fantasy type of way, but they also rule kind of like that vision, that fantasy. It can lead to things like delusion, illusion, denial,
Mhm.
very much kind of looking over here into how great things could be. So, yeah, that's how I would describe Pisces from a general standpoint. Yeah.
So, I mean, technically, I feel like humanity may have a tendency to do that. Are you saying that Pisces are especially prone to that kind of sides?
I would say yes, it is said that people who have Pisces in their chart somewhere, or if you are a Pisces, that you might be more prone to these types of behaviors than other people. But I love what you just said because it's true that all of us have these tendencies, regardless of sign, which I think is a very important aspect of how we talk about astrology on the episodes. Is your astrology reflects qualities within you, but you know just because like I'm not a Pisces and you're not a Pisces, but that doesn't mean we don't experience the same qualities. So it's more so looking at your chart to see where Pisces falls in your chart to give you an idea of maybe what house or what area of life you notice these themes come up most strongly. So to give an example, if you have Pisces in your seventh house, even if you're not a Pisces, you might experience this type of self sacrificial and very empathetic, this guilt that you feel for not saving other people in relationships. Whereas, if you have this in the fourth house, you might experience that more strongly with your family, or if you have it in the 10th house with your career, and so on and so forth. So,
Wow.
yeah. Mhm.
So, I don't believe I have any Pisces or water signs in my chart. Do you?
Yes. So, yeah, you don't have any water in your chart. I think the only thing you have in water in your chart is your south node, which is in Cancer. It's an energy that you've already mastered, somewhere you've already been, et cetera, et cetera. I do have water in my chart, but it's kind of like you. It's very minimal. I have a north node in Scorpio, but I do actually have something in Pisces. I have Saturn in Pisces. Um,
Mm.
so that's interesting to give an idea of what this might look like in real life. I have Saturn and Pisces in my 11th house, and so Saturn represents karmic lessons, things that we're here to learn that maybe we have struggled to learn, patterns that will keep coming back until we address them. I know that in the last episode we did too, we talked about Aquarius, and you have Saturn in Aquarius. So that was one of the ways that I was articulating that. So for Saturn and Pisces, this could be karmic lessons around things such as, I've had to learn that you can't always save everybody from their problems. And sometimes trying to sacrifice yourself to save somebody else is not really what the higher calling is, if you will. I've also had to really learn that I have an interesting relationship with guilt, where a lot of times I will feel guilty for not offering aid or offering support or saving, like I said, saving somebody from their pain. And that's a unique circumstance that, like, I and anybody else who has Saturn and Pisces has to learn to navigate. Is, how do I find this balance between um, giving to others and helping other people, but also remembering that within that, helping yourself is also part of that giving. Like how can you help another person if you have yet to help yourself in some way? And I
Yeah.
don't think it's that black and white, but that notion is part of what I'm supposed to be learning with Saturn and Pisces. um it's mainly that type of stuff. even addiction and escapism. Like I think that I can at times have a natural tendency to, like when I get overwhelmed by things, just be like, oh, I'll just ignore it and hope that it just solves itself. I'll just avoid it and it will figure itself out. It's kind of like a Pisces sort of a thing to do where I just want to escape away from it. Or
Hmm.
another example would be that sometimes I will envision something in the way that I would really like it to be. It's sort of like this fantasy, even in relationships, like seeing all the good things about somebody, and then eventually reality hits, and you're like, whoa, like this is not like that was like the fantasy that I was seeing. It was like seeing things through rose-colored glasses and not through reality. I've had to navigate that as well, where I will project a lot of like greatness onto whether it's people or jobs or a situation, a house or a home, and then reality hits and I'm like, whoa, I feel so disappointed. It's like a big fall from grace. But then I end up realizing it's not that there's anything necessarily gravely wrong with these things. It's just that I had such a high standard of like fantasy that it just doesn't match. So there's been a lot of like navigating that type of stuff with Saturn and Pisces. So that's one of the ways, those are some of the ways that Pisces energy can kind of manifest in real life, if you will.
Mm. I think that's why I wanted to potentially name today's episode Pisces, why we should all stop self-sacrificing and unconditional bullshit. You know that like Mel Robbins' really famous line, let them? It's
Mm-hmm.
like they're gonna do what the heck they're gonna do anyway. Or however life is gonna manifest in your life, it's gonna manifest in the way it's gonna be anyway. So we can't
Mm-hmm.
control it. So we need to like stop with the stress or trying to control other people's mood and how
Mm-hmm.
they, are gonna reflect themselves to us and just let them do their shit, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think Pisces is so interesting because recently I went on, a friend group meeting and one of my friend's boyfriend's friend was a Pisces. But before I knew he was a Pisces, he would talk about how he's a doctor, like anesthesiologist. And he was talking about his just the way he rolls in the hospital. He's like, there was a woman, like she wasn't my patient. I'm not supposed to help her, but like nobody was helping her. I felt so bad for her. I had to go and help her. And it was very like
Mm-hmm.
caring and loving energy, which is really amazing. And later he
Yeah.
was like, I'm a Pisces. I was like, oh, that makes
Oh,
sense. So I do understand that like Pisces, especially the Pisces men that I've met, seem to be very emotionally mature if they're in the highest embodiment. And I
yeah.
really like that. I think once you texted me that I love Pisces men. There's something about men with emotional intelligence that is necessary.
Yeah.
So I guess going into that, what are some romantic characteristics in Pisces people?
Yeah. So, of course, everybody is different. So, this might not encompass every Pisces person out there, just for anybody listening. But yeah, I find, well, I guess let's go off of what you just said, because I would be curious to know for you. I know you just shared a few characteristics that you really appreciate, but it is true that a lot of the Pisces people in my life, men or women, I do really enjoy their presence in my life. And that's because of things like, for example, they can be very emotionally empathetic and very compassionate and understanding. And they're also very good listeners, I find, for myself personally. I've noticed that they're very good listeners. That's part of what that empathy is, and how they extend that empathy to you is like, let me really listen to you and hear what it is that you're trying to say. Um, and sort of be a sponge to that. I also like that, and this is something that maybe some people may not like, if you will, but they can be kind of like moody at times, which I think if you're not like about that, then it could be like, oh my god, like what is this roller coaster we're going on? But I
You
think there's
said
something
moody?
moody, yeah, yeah. Like they could
Oh,
be like everything's good, and then like it's like a wave of emotion. Um,
interesting.
Yes, I mean, I think water signs can be that way in general, especially I notice like Cancer and Pisces, but again, like I'm not trying to
Is it the
generalize.
passive aggressiveness you said?
Yeah, I think so I think passive aggressiveness can be a trait that I notice in water signs in general, like when they're in that
Mm,
more like quote unquote shadow of water is not being so direct and being more passive, but clearly feeling something about like feeling
mhm.
some type of way, but not really being direct about that and just kind of being more passive aggressive. But no, I just mean Pisces can be very like moody and it can be very obvious, like in the way that they express themselves. But that's why I'm saying I don't mean it in a bad way. Like I don't mean it like in a passive aggressive way. I just mean like, you know how when you look at some people you can tell, oh, they're in a good mood today, or like, oh, they seem like they don't want to be bothered. It's sort of like that. Like sometimes it can be like that, which I can see how in some form if I don't know how to manage that or or hold that, it could become difficult. But I can appreciate the emotional honesty with that. Because one of the things that I've come to find with Pisces, especially in this higher, if you will, embodiment, is they are able to understand like those different moods. And so when I come and I'm also in those different moods, they're not trying to like fix the situation or like make me feel differently or get me to stop feeling my emotions. They're just like, cool, we get it. Like we totally get it, girl. Feel how you gotta feel. And it's nice to feel that your emotions can be accepted in that space and in that interaction instead of feeling like, oh, I better get my shit together really fast so that they don't feel bothered by this, you know? So that's like one of those traits is very, like I said, empathetic and understanding, compassionate, and looking at you when you're struggling or when you're going through it emotionally with, like with that kindness. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I think those are some of the things that I really appreciate about Pisces people. In addition to that, Pisces also rules the connection to spirituality and this higher understanding, or what is the word I'm looking for? Sense of oneness and connectedness. And obviously, I'm really into spiritual things of any kind, really. And so I find that usually with Pisces people, I'm able to have those conversations like very openly.
Yeah.
And even if they don't necessarily see the world in the same way that I do, there's an openness and a desire to want to hear and listen and learn, and just a space to let it be what it is, which is really, really, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do think that when I meet water signs, there's this like emotional comfort if they are again in their highest embodiment. You feel safe being vulnerable with
Yes.
water signs.
Hmm.
I like one of the things that you wrote about Pisces. It says natural romantic and spiritual seekers, but their love of fantasy can lead to confusion, delusion, and denial. The struggle with disillusionment, seeing people through rose-colored glasses, turning red flags into green ones, which is a lot of women, right? And believing that if they just love hard enough, others will rise to meet them. More generally, while they hold the most magical visions, they might have unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like I've been there before as well when it
Mm,
comes to romance. I think we all have,
sure.
especially women are more prone to this, where if a man isn't as giving to you, you start
Mm,
to, instead of pulling back, you start to pull forward to that person, trying to,
mm,
get some validations.
mm,
But then I've learned
sure.
that, if the person doesn't want to, they don't want to no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And I think there is a very important factor in allowing the persons to figure out the problem themselves instead of always babying them.
Mm,
So I've learned that if this person is, even your kids, if your kids are misbehaving, I personally am a believer that you need to punish. You need to
mm,
show them what is right and wrong,
mm,
instead of just unconditionally loving your child in a way
mm,
that's showing love by showing them what is right and wrong and showing
mm,
them consequences. So
mm,
even in romantic relationships, I personally now at this moment don't believe in unconditional anymore. I
mm,
believe in showing somebody consequences, and that is also showing your self love. So in a way,
mm.
all of that somehow flows.
Yeah.
So that unconditional rose-colored glasses um, is a lesson that I think I personally learned as well.
Do you feel, I'm so curious because I see how there's a correlation. Like, do you feel that part of how you've gotten to this place of finding that clarity of not really believing so much in this unconditional love and showing people consequences, do you think that that comes from an experience that you had where you did see something through rose colored glasses or see a person through the rose colored glasses and then you kind of realize like, whoa, that's not the way that I should be doing this? Or was it like something else? Just curious.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've had this problem with my old management as well.
Mm,
When I went through that whole lawsuit, I saw my old ex-CEO, as I should have seen this person as not capable of doing business. There were so many red flags, but I had this delusion like, no, I need to understand this person is going through a hard time. But that, in fact, was draining, days and years of my life and my career.
mm,
I should have been a little bit more demanding and a little bit more
mm,
selfish to be like, hey, things are not working out. What's
mm,
going on? And should have left when I had to. But
mm,
having this unconditional love and understanding for somebody has really um, hurt my career, hurt myself. So I
yeah.
think that's where it started. And then, when I was in a relationship and somebody cheated on me, somebody said the wrong things, really hurtful things. Instead of
Mm,
me being like, oh, I should pull back, I was like, oh, this is making me want to obsess over this person more
Yeah.
in a sick way. I think there's some kind of a dynamic when the person you love hurts you, you start to have this like rose colored glasses of trying to understand where they're coming from. Maybe they're going through a bad time. Instead of showing the consequences, hey, no, you shouldn't say that to me. So I
Mm,
think it comes from various stuff that I went through in my life. Yes.
mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I wanted to add something to what you're saying because I think the train of thought that you're having really encompasses something important about Pisces, which is Pisces is this boundless, formless. It just dissolves. This is another thing I might have written it on that sheet. Is it just like dissolves boundaries entirely,
Mm,
and that's what enables us to feel like we're so enmeshed and we're all like one with another person. Pisces does represent unconditional love, unconditional compassion, all these things. It's a natural ruler of Neptune, the planet Neptune, which is all about the same things that Pisces stands for. But what I find is that we live in a world that is very third dimensional, whereas
mm,
Pisces represents more of this, fifth dimension plus, this higher dimension where ego is not involved. But since we live in a very like
yeah.
3D reality where ego is involved, you cannot just be that way and just like so unconditional without boundaries. It's like in order for that type of energy to kind of be here and be experienced to its highest degree, it's like you need to have it with boundaries, which is kind of it sounds like kind of what you're getting at, like through reflecting these consequences. It sometimes comes just through you setting your own
Mhm.
boundary or speaking up for yourself and been like, hey, don't talk to me like that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
um Not crazy, but we shouldn't use that
Yeah.
word in relationships, I guess. Um
Now, some
but
people are
yeah,
crazy out there. Hold on, let's just say it. Like some people are crazy.
yeah. So
But I think
yeah,
you and I talk a lot about, right and wrong. And I know I've
yeah,
been taught in spirituality, there's no right and wrong, like unconditional love, which I do agree in the 5D sense, but we live in a world with 3D and boundaries and rules and laws, and things are very dense. So in a way, we have to play by the book. We have to play by the 3D rules. So I do believe having a higher understanding, but also understanding that in this 3D world, we need to show consequences,
yeah,
and right and wrong does exist in our society in this
sure,
3D world. So
yes,
that's what I'm saying
absolutely.
about unconditional. I don't believe
Mm.
in.
Sure. That's a great point. No, I love that you said that. I think that's a great point. And to add to that, I think another thing too is if it were the case that people on earth, that all of us had this higher perspective and all of us could go about life with this higher perspective of love and compassion, and we all had a handle on like our triggers and we knew how to take accountability, and you know then maybe it would be more likely that we could engage in this more boundless form of interaction with people. But kind of kind of to the same point that you're making, like we as a society have not necessarily, in my opinion, like evolved to that point where all of us are going about the world really
Mhm.
trying to manage ourselves and have this, whatever. So trying to do that in this type of world, it feels savage to try to do that, because it's maybe not going to yield the outcome that you want, and you'll run into some hiccups, into some bumps, and there are people
Mhm.
who like will take advantage of your kindness and your compassion and whatever, instead of, like I said, holding themselves accountable and being like, hold up, why do I feel like I need to do this to this person? Like, let me not, so yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
all good things. So I love that you said that. It's great.
Yeah. I think the word is enablement. I think 10 out of 10 times when I didn't say what I wanted, that person have crossed my boundaries.
Yeah,
It's bound to happen. So I think definitely leaning towards having boundaries, accountabilities, saying what you want at that moment
yeah.
helps. Of course, saying it in a nice,
Mhm.
respectful way.
Yeah, actually, you saying that just makes me realize something else. I was at working an event last week, and a lot of the querents, the individuals that had come to roll the dice, a lot of them kept rolling Pisces, and I kept getting the same message like coming through. It seemed, I don't know how else to phrase that, coming through for them about Pisces. And what I had said was exactly what you just mentioned. I said, this is a call to kind of have better boundaries, and sometimes you can feel guilty for not like saving people or giving more to them, and you might not really have anything to give, but you still feel like you have to find something to give. And I explained how the problem with this is that it can lead to this position of like almost like enabling somebody,
Mhm.
where like, hey, it's okay, no worries. It can lead to this position of like enabling people, whereby strangely, by not having a boundary, um you enable someone to keep becoming dependent on you for whatever it is that you're giving them, whether it's the validation or like a literal thing like money or whatever this is. And in setting a boundary, not only are you showing respect towards yourself and your needs, but you are also giving somebody else an opportunity to handle themselves without you for an hour,
Mhm.
or for however long or whatever the boundary is, which is important because at the end of the day, yes, we we are designed to connect with other people, and we are designed to be able to rely on other people and to lean on other people, but we also need to strike that with a balance of being interdependent and being able to handle certain things on our own. And so sometimes I notice that with Pisces, where if you look at some of the relationships that are very Piscean in nature, there can be that kind of like selfless service, but to the point where there's now also like a dependence on that, and that person, like one or two people, struggles to function fully without the other person's help, and da da da. And I'm not trying to say that that's always bad, because there can be a certain scenario where that's necessary. But I think it's to the point that you're making, that sometimes it can act as more of an enabling situation, like enabling a pattern, than it can be to actually create like a healthy dynamic. So yeah, agree.
Yeah. I don't think I know any Pisces friends, to be now.
Mm.
Now we're speaking. Everyone that I come across, they're not Pisces.
Yeah, I don't think, because I'm trying to think even of the people that you and I know together, but
No,
I don't think so. There's like
that's
Aries,
interesting.
Cancer, Sag,
Have you ever dated Pisces?
Lydia. No, I have not. I had a crush on somebody that was a Pisces though once.
Oh.
A guy. Yeah, it was great. He was great. Very, very romantic, like, very romantic leaning. And I think that's the other thing too. Like, I think sometimes the romantic aspect of Pisces can be more of like an aura, like an energy, versus like an obvious thing. Like, I don't think all of them are walking around with roses and like lyrics and like a boombox. It's not like always that obvious thing, but it's an energy, and that's how I felt about this person that I'm talking about. I had a crush on this guy that was a Pisces, and he's into music and all this awesome stuff. He's super artistic, which is another Piscean type of trait. But yeah, he didn't like walk around with like, doing things that you would might necessarily think like, oh, this guy is definitely romantic. But once you got to know him, you would see like the way that he cares and the way that he tries to like to help and believes in this. I don't know, through
Mm.
conversations that you'd have, you kind of realize like, oh wow, yeah, this person is pretty romantic.
I went on a date, like one-time date meeting with
Yeah.
a Pisces, and he was very like empathetic and open and emotionally open. And I
Mhm.
think it feels good. I think that's why women love this Pisces energy, is because they ask you, "How about you?" I know it's
Yeah.
such like a cheesy, like obvious thing, bare minimal, but a lot of men
Totally.
might not ask, "How about you?" You know?
Right.
So I
Right.
think when they open their energy to be like, "Oh, what do you think about this?" It feels
Mhm.
good. I don't
Yeah.
think we were like a physical match, but
I see. I see. Yeah.
yeah. And you wrote Pisces and Virgo axis that they're sister signs, meaning they're like
Mhm.
opposite?
Yes. Yeah, so let me talk about that actually, because I think there was a great connection here. So they're sister signs. Sister signs, for anybody wondering, means that they're opposites. Every sign has an opposite, and in astrology, opposing signs, they share themes, but they also differ greatly. So for Pisces and Virgo, one of the things that I've noticed with them is they both rule things like service, like a selflessness in their service, of wanting to give to others and be there for others and help others. Virgo does this through the archetype of like the fixer. They're an earth sign, so they're more practical, and they think about how to like practically and like analyze something and then fix it. And Pisces is more of like the emotional savior. How do I save you from this pain? How do I give you a solution to this? Um, so that's one thing that they share. But they also share the axis of kind of like idealization perfection. Pisces is idealizing things, seeing the fantasy of it and ignoring maybe the reality of it. And Virgo is wanting things to be perfect, as in precise and accurate and like orderly and organized and like clean, like things like that. So they both chase this ideal, or this perfection state. And I think, yeah, I mean, well, I think a lot of things about that, but they both chase this axis, and we can see in the energy of it how it helps them and hinders them. you know Again, like I said about Pisces, just the notion of trying to chase this fantasy, and then when reality hits, it's like really disappointing. It's like with Virgo, they're always trying to make small edits and small changes to get something to be perfect. But eventually what happens is they usually hit a point where they become very frustrated because it's not working. Because the point is that perfection is an illusion in and of itself. It's not really real. It's not a state that you're going to be at consistently, but also perfection, unless you're talking about like a measurable state of perfection. Perfection is subjective anyway, but perfection is kind of an illusion. It's an illusion, really. And even if you do reach it, it's usually fleeting. You know, it's like a moment of like, oh, yes, finally I got there. It's perfect. But then, like, what? It goes back down to normal. And then you're on this chase again for perfection, to feel like everything is perfect and just right. And I think a lot of times what Pisces and Virgo are here to learn is that when you can embrace reality for what it is, when you can embrace like the imperfections that life offers you, and you can see that as almost perfection, you know, that's when life really blossoms for you. That's when things and like life starts giving to you in ways that you didn't see before, or that you weren't able to receive before. Because instead of some curated version of perfection that you're trying to project onto everything, you just accept like, okay, wow, this isn't going to be perfect, but this is what's kind of nice about this not being perfect. And I can just, you know, there's no pressure then to just be perfect and to engage with others perfectly. I think to give an example of that, like I think I was talking about this with one of my friends. I think on social media we see this a lot, where people always want to be perfect on social media. They want the photos to be perfectly edited and like perfectly this and that, and the makeup has to look right, and the editing has to, you know, and even the content. Like some people will avoid posting content because it's not perfect, but then like they never post, and then it's kind of just like, what are we waiting for, you know? And that's one of the narratives of Pisces and Virgo, can be like either show up perfectly or not at all. But it's like, is that really the best way to go about it, or is it just show up and learn as you go? You know what I mean? Show up imperfectly and learn.
Yeah, and it says Pisces is called to embrace reality without losing faith, to see others clearly while keeping their hearts open, to hold compassion without self-sacrifice. I like that. And to receive as much as they give. The same magic they idolize in others already exists within them. The
Mhm.
key is not to fake their way through life, but to embody their own light fully and unapologetically. Love that. All right, guys. I know this is a little bit of a short episode, but I'm a little bit sick, so it's a little hard for me to talk. So I think we did go through all the points of Pisces, and happy birthday to you guys, Pisces. And if you do have them in your chart, write to us what you guys thought about today's episode. Well, see you guys in our next season. What is after Pisces? Taurus?
Aries, actually.
Ooh, Aries. Okay, my favorite. We'll be back in our Aries season. Bye.
Already in